Hello and welcome to Talkin Jake, a special Foolish Bailey episode. And we're talking about, I guess we're thinking active Hall of Famers today. And you had texted me this idea, and it was right after I gave out as an award on Talking Baseball that I was like, Christian Yelich is oddly close to the closer than I thought to the Hall of Fame, especially with how he's playing this year. I think MVP's in the bag speak, but you built on a lot more than that. You've kind of got them by percentage points. We've got hitters, we've got pitchers, and we've kind of got the oddball. So before we get there, Bailey, a final one, and then I'm done. I'm sorry. I came 25 minutes late. We're recording Watching Guts. So a genuine apology has been served, and Bailey is my daddy for this episode. How are you?
I'm doing well, son. How are you?
It's good to be home. We half joked about it beforehand, but carry the rock. Give me some of your thoughts to even get into this exercise, and then I think we'll work our way down with the locks and go from there.
Yeah, my first thoughts are, when you're discussing the concept of active player Hall of Famers, that's something you can do a check on in almost every year, right? Because some guys fall off pace, some guys were off pace and they get back on pace. Some guys emerge and have monster seasons. Maybe like, here's a good example. A couple years ago, Paul Goldschmidt won MVP, and then all of a sudden he became like a pretty like easy Hall of Famer to project. Whereas before that, his case would have been ignored, and he probably could have still made it on the writers ballot, but now it's just because of one big season that Paul Goldschmidt had. That was like wrapping the nice little bow on a Hall of Fame career, and then everything else he's done since then is gravy. But the big thing I want to say before we get into this exercise is there's elements of this that are reading the tea leaves, right? You have to not just think, who do I, Foolish Bailey, or who do you, speaking Jacob, prefer to see in the Hall of Fame. You're trying to find, who are the guys that the BBWAA are going to vote in at a 75% threshold. And there's disagreements there sometimes, right? Like there are players that I would personally go to bat for that I wouldn't think would have a chance on a BBWAA ballot. So that's kind of what I'm trying to project. And then also, keep this in the back of your mind as well. There are multiple ways into the Hall of Fame. So even if you don't get in via that writer's ballot, there are certain guys I think who have more of a veterans committee type vibe to them that are even active players right now. And there's one that's definitely coming to mind for me, and we'll get to him a little bit later. But that's sort of the preface, the intro here. We're discussing, active players who could definitely be Hall of Famers, active players who are maybe more 50-50, active players who have an outside shot. We're talking about the concept of Hall of Fame pace. But I think the big thing is we're trying to sort of read the tea leaves and figure out what the baseball writers would do or the Veterans Committee would do, not necessarily what we think.
Bailey, as everyone just heard, you're a little more calculated than I am usually. The math I just did in my head, which shouldn't be respected, but I'll tell you and let me know what's right. If this exercise was like let's get hardcore about it and lock in answers, how many Hall of Famers are normally playing at a time? The math I just did in my head was that like 2.5 guys get let in every year. And if I just did like a 10-year time frame, there'd be like 25 active players who are Hall of Famers. Is that number crazy or dumb?
Well, what's funny is it's harder and harder to get into the Hall of Famer, which is funny because people seem to think it's easier. If you look at baseball history as a whole, there were times in like the 20s and 30s where 15 to 20% of plate appearances were taken by eventual future Hall of Famers, which is crazy to think about, right? And that number has actually declined. And one reason that number has declined is because of expansion, right? So, back in those days, there 8 teams or 16 teams, 8 teams in each league. Nowadays, we have 30 teams, and so there's way more players, and there's more players on each roster. And so as a result, the percentage of plate appearances that are taken by Hall of Fame hitters decreases over the course of baseball history for the most part, and the percentage of innings pitched by Hall of Fame pitchers, same thing. So it's interesting too, because I think we'll get into this later, but like obviously the standards of Hall of Fame pitchers are going to have to change because or else no pitcher under the age of like 35 is ever going to get in. So that's a big thing, but I would almost project it being as like right now, if I just had to guess, just looking at I would say there's probably about maybe 20 to 25 active Hall of Fame hitters, and maybe assuming the standards changed, I think they'll have to 10 to 15 Hall of Fame pitchers, something
Okay.
like that.
Okay, so a little more than I did with my turkey math there. Let's start chewing off, and this is always one of those funny exercises that it's like the weird ones that are probably the fun, silly conversations of Wake and Jake. We need to save just because we got to check some boxes along the way because it feels more rude to be 55 minutes in and go, Mike Trout's a lock. So let's check some of the big boys. You labeled these 100. You have 100%, 95, and 90. I'll let you cook for the people. We'll do some hitters first.
Yeah, so I think there's 4 hitters right now who, if they just retire today, get into the Hall of Fame. It's Mike Trout, it's Mookie Betts, it's Joey Votto, and for me, it's Paul Goldschmidt, who I just discussed. I really think that MVP put him over the top. I think those are the 4 guys that they don't have to play another game of baseball if they don't want to. Like, to me, they're in. I think with regards to Trout and Betts, I don't think anyone has any doubts about that. I think with Votto and Goldschmidt, they might not necessarily be first ballot because you're looking at, a more sabermetric case probably for both of those guys. But they're both great. They both had excellent careers. I think those are, for me, the 4 that if they retire today, they're in.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a WAR person, Joey Votto lands eerily close to Miguel Cabrera, which surprising a little bit. And yeah, I think everyone surrounding these guys except Rafael Palmeiro and Mark McGwire are Hall of Famers. So yeah, I thought about even trying to find some devil's advocate for those two, because I think maybe this is horribly rude when I think, I guess when you start thinking Scott Rowland and some of the newer guys, like I do think these guys are that tier, and I'm not really a Hall of Fame snob. I just think it's a little surprising. You've got first basemen, each have 1 MVP. Maybe I'm being big market snobby a little bit here, but these guys are in.
Yeah, I think they're in. I think the question is, moving on to that 95% tier, if there's another first baseman that's already 100% tier. So we're going to move into these guys that I'm going to say they're just putting on the finishing touches of their careers. They've basically got it, but they're putting on the finishing touches of their Hall of Fame careers. And I have 3 players in that tier, 3 hitters to be specific. And I have Bryce Harper, Freddie Freeman, and Nolan Arenado in this tier. They have basically done it. They have basically made it, but they're putting on the finishing touches in ways that Trout, Betts, Votto, and Goldschmidt don't necessarily have to. Do you agree with the opinion, for example, that Votto and Goldschmidt are like locks and Freddie Freeman is still putting on the finishing touches?
Yeah, I guess this part of the mental exercise for me is like, how anal are we being about it? Like if Bryce Harper stopped playing baseball as of today, which again becomes a dramatic statement. I mean, probably, but it's like, okay, what happened? Like Bryce Harper moved to Argentina, started a new life, and we just never saw him again, and it's like an all-time 30 for 30. I don't know. Like, you probably still do get that guy in the Hall of Fame. Like, I do think the numbers are, if we were being like that, I think the numbers would be a year or two short, but we think, worst case for Bryce Harper, if injuries were to kick in, he got old and he lost it, like, he's probably still going to stumble into like 20 homers at how many 5 years over the next 8? I'm just making up numbers, but
yeah.
I don't think where their final numbers are right now, but I think like it's happening. Like,
yeah,
it's happening.
It's like they're basically in, but I'm just not quite like, Bryce Harper has 1,600 hits and 326 career home runs. Like, that's below the standards, right? But he has the contract to put up the counting stats to get him to where he needs to be, and he has 2 MVPs, so.
Yeah, and maybe that's the better way to look at this and why you put the percentages on him. Like, unless the 5% chance that Bryce Harper has a Chris Davis moment, tough up for Phillies fans right now. Then yeah, things become a little trickier, but 2-time MVP, like it's happening. And I think Arenado too, he's going to go down as a historic third baseman. Like, I think people overlook some of his hitting numbers because they just think of Arenado, the defensive guy. Now that we are a little less rude to Coors Field offensive numbers sometimes, like Arenado's amazing. One of, like, when you start doing third baseman, defense, and peak seasons, he can go toe-to-toe with anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's, when you park adjust it, and I mean, there's only one Brooks Robinson, but I mean, Arenado's probably been a better hitter than Brooks Robinson, for
Right.
example. And he would stack up nicely against some of the other, defensive third base greats with his bat as well, like just total all around career.
And like when you think about what 95 and we're about to get to 90% really means, like they stopped right now. It's like, yeah, there's a chance they wouldn't get enough votes right now.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
Put in a few more years of getting some counting numbers or one more postseason moment.
the next guy you could argue is 100% because he'll be a part of the Hall of Fame no matter what happens. You labeled it the Shohei Ohtani category.
Yeah, I have Shohei Ohtani at 90% right now. I mean, it's hard to envision a scenario where Ohtani doesn't make the Hall of Fame. It's probably something like he doesn't ever pitch again, and he is like a pretty mid DH for like the next 10 years. But even then, I mean, he probably would get in. But yeah, I mean, one reason to not just crown Ohtani just yet, he's only played 7 seasons in the big leagues. Usually the requirement is 10. That's been waived a couple of times, but I think Addy Joss was an example because he died. But for the most part, you got to play 10 seasons. And then, so Otani's not there yet. So I've got him right at the 90% mark. Like he's like 90% of his way to the Hall of Fame. And the only thing that could probably stop him now is some combination of never pitches again, underperforms as a DH, and the Dodgers don't win a World Series. That would be sort of the path for him to somehow not be a Hall of Famer.
The curse of Ipe.
The curse of Ipe.
It's something. I think there's some pages that you just have to absolutely throw it out. There's some pages where it's interesting. The similar batters through in their age on the Baseball Reference page, when you scroll down, it's usually right above their salaries, and it's funny to see because I guess for regular players, I think you get a grab bag. You'll get like, wait, they're the same as XYZ who was a stud, and then they're the same as XYZ who is not as much of a stud. And I want to save that for a couple of the examples that are coming up, because you have 30 or older, excellent pace, but still time to lose it, and then young studs, and I think I want to combine those two.
Okay, yeah, I like that. So yeah, the next sort of tier of guys I had are guys who they're 30 or older. They've probably played the majority of their careers at this point. And they're on an excellent pace, but there is still time to lose that pace because some guys, they lose it, at age 31, 32, 33. There are a lot of guys who are Hall of Famers through age 30, and then the tail off happens. I would actually argue that for the most part, a lot of guys, what happens in their 30s basically makes or breaks whether they're Hall of Famers, because there's a lot of guys who are great players in their 20s and then for whatever reasons aren't in their 30s. That next tier of player that I have, it's Manny Machado, it's Jose Ramirez, it's Aaron Judge, it's Francisco Lindor. And I will point out something here, specifically with regards to the separation of Machado and Arenado. Like, this is definitely a reading the tea leaf situation. I would rate Machado and Arenado in terms of their just career value very similarly. I would also point out that Machado is younger than Arenado. I would also point out that Machado is probably right now looking slightly less washed than Arenado and probably has more future value to put out on the field than Arenado. But just Arenado has more accolades. And Machado has a reputation from early in his career that's maybe not the greatest. And I just feel like looking at the tea leaves, the writers would rather vote for Nolan Arenado today than Manny Machado. So Manny Machado is kind of in that lower tier. J-Ram's a funny one for me. I love Jose Ramirez. He's my favorite player in Major League Baseball. Straight up, has been for years. The guy's just been playing at an absolute insane level for like the last 7 or 8 seasons. He had one slight misstep in the first half of like 2019, and everyone thought he was just a flash in the pan. And then no, he just kept doing it. And now you look at his career and it's like, yeah, this guy's clearly on pace to be a Hall of Famer. Judge, I mean, I feel like that would be an intriguing one if his career were to end earlier, he would have a steep decline. That would be an interesting discussion, right? Like he would almost be deGrom-esque as a hitter instead, just like someone who's had like just some of the highest highs we've seen, and then but maybe not just the longest career. And then Francisco Lindor, I would say Lindor is kind of similar to J-Ram, the way their careers are taking shape. I mean, just just so consistent. It's just 5-6 WAR every year. Like just rack it up. Yeah, those for me are the four in that 30 or older. Excellent Hall of Fame pace, but there is still time to lose out on that pace because it happens.
Yeah, that's the that's the rub. And this is I don't want this to come off as offense to you. I guess my favorite thing about podcasting is discovering things along the way. Arenado and Machado, like in my head, those are layups. Like, even J-Ram at this point, I've seen him be so good for so long. It's like, well, what's a Hall of Famer? When you get sucked into WAR, which isn't everything, but I feel like Hall of Fame wise, especially, I like looking at the positions and kind of by leaderboard and seeing where there's a clear drop off. At third base, Scott Rowland was like an argument. Like, Scott Rowland was a discussion. He's at 70.1 career WAR. These guys we're talking about, Arenado and Machado, are at 55. Evan Longoria is at 58.6. So if Father Time actually kicks in, it's one of those, and I think it was our first episode that did really well, and we were looking for guys at two tiers below this. But it's always becomes the Hall of Very Good discussion that, man, if Arenado or Machado or J-Ram slow it down, or even if these guys don't keep it up for a couple more years, they're going to fall into a much bigger limbo area that I wonder, like, because I'm seeing Greg Nettles here with 68 WAR that, I don't know, if, let's say, Arenado slows down and lands at 61, he's got a couple more things on his trophy case, but I don't know. That becomes an ugly old man baseball writer discussion.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. There's a tier of like a well-rounded second baseman and third baseman, like post like expansion era type guys. Greg Nettles, Ken Boyer, Buddy Bell at third base. I throw out like Bobby Grich there, Lou Whitaker at second base. Guys who aren't in the Hall of Fame, but put up a lot of WAR. And I would say the difference now is I just feel like probably just speaking like in terms of their eras, like Arenado especially, but also Machado and J-Ram, like just got more love for what they did in their time than probably Greg Nettles or Ken Boyer or Buddy Bell did in their time, or Bobby Grich or Lou Whitaker for that matter. And that's because some of the ways we viewed baseball have changed, and it's defensive metrics, taking those into account. That's obviously going to boost those guys' value. So, yeah, I mean, it's a great point, but there's certainly scenarios where Arenado and Machado finish with less WAR than some of those guys, and yet have a much easier path to the Hall of Fame.
And I think, again, this becomes weird because I like Manny Machado. He could be one of the best players in the second half this season, and it wouldn't, if it pops up that after the All-Star break he has a 971 OPS and he played some of the best defense, it's like, oh yeah, that's right. He was hurt to start the year. Like, you can do the world of baseball so easily. I mean, one of the names we just said, like, isn't getting in, right? Like, I don't know how it happens, but at this point of the exercise, something happens to someone.
Let's do the math. If I say each of those guys have an 80% chance to get in, like what's the chance that one of them doesn't get in? Basically, I'm doing it right now.
Oh, God, never been a math guy.
Yeah, so it's like, so it's about 50-50. It's really about 60-40. But yeah, I mean, the chances are one of those guys doesn't get in, And if I had to guess, I would say it's probably either J-Ram or Lindor for me. I'm going to go Lindor. Just because even now he's so good, and I just don't feel like he gets the love.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, right? It's almost like the contract got too big or just Mets effect, but, like, why isn't he an all-star right now? Might be by the time this comes out, but, yeah, I wonder, if Manny fell off a cliff, like you said, he had the young guy. Like, the media wasn't the best to him because he was like an aggressive young player that, I don't know. it feels even dirty saying something like that. So I don't want to even say it anymore. So I might just keep it moving.
Yeah, let's keep it moving. Let's talk about the next tier. I've got some young studs here. They do not obviously have the counting numbers yet to have a Hall of Fame career, but it just seems like they're pacing well. I've got Soto on there. I think that's probably the closest thing to a slam dunk Hall of Famer we have for anyone who I'm going to say is under the age of 30. Now that Ohtani's 30, I'm going to say of any player in baseball right now who's under the age of 30, who's definitely going to be a Hall of Famer, I'm going to say Juan Soto. Gap there for me, but then I'm going to follow up with Acuna and Devers. Acuna with the second ACL tear on the different knee, like that's scary. Like that's
interesting.
That long term, that could be difficult, but obviously he was pacing well. Obviously he has an MVP, which Soto doesn't have yet. And then I have Rafael Devers in that category as well. I just think it's more of I don't think he's going to blow anyone's mind with he's not going to put up 80 WAR in his career or anything like that makes him like a slam dunk, but just like the way he's going to do it, he's going to have the counting stats because he started so early. He's going to be a Boston Red Sox guy. He's got the big contract extension. It just seems like just the way his career is taking shape, he's in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, I always get nervous about saying scouting type things, but whatever it is about how Devers hits, it feels like that will work. Maybe it's just because we saw Poppy with a lefty swing do it for so long and it literally could be that. But I don't think it is. I think there's something about how Rafi Devers hits that you're just that will work for a while.
Well, and what's funny too is he's such a bad ball hitter too, and I think sometimes people think that doesn't age well. I think part of it too is look at his physique. It's he has the physique already of a guy who's a little bit older probably. So it's he can already play in that body. He's just gonna keep doing this. He'll probably have to move to first base, but otherwise that's his defense isn't gonna be what gets him in the first place. He's just gonna keep hitting everything.
He hits everything. We just saw that recently. Yeah, if I had to rank those three, it's Soto. I mean, this is the similar batters through age 24, the names that pop out. I'm going to leave a couple out. We'll see soon. Bryce Harper, Frank Robinson, Andrew Jones, okay. Mike Trout, Ken Griffey Jr., Juan Gonzalez, Orlando Cepeda, Miguel Cabrera, Eddie Matthews. So it's this one's for me one of those how few guys are this good at that age. And yeah, and the Ronnie stuff honestly scares me.
Yeah, long term, it's definitely scary.
I hope the pivot point on that, it's something I bring up a lot. Trevor teased the idea of a thick old Mike Trout still hitting 40 homers one day, and I really like that image. That, Ronald Acuna, if the speed leaves, maybe he just, maybe Ronald Acuna looks like Marcell Ozuna in 8 years, and he's just a thick daddy that ropes balls. That happens.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, is if that doesn't happen, then he's basically Eric Davis, that is an example of someone who had an Acuna-esque, mirrored career through, let's say, age 27, and then, the injuries got to him. So there are guys like that. Andrew Jones was a great name that you pulled out there. That's a guy who through age 29 would have been such a slam dunk on this list, and then it's a struggle right now. He's on the writer's ballot. It's going to probably come down to the wire. There was a time where probably it would have seemed like Ryan Howard was going to be, an easy Hall of Famer. So it's tough to say that these guys' careers, they can certainly take a turn.
They kept him in the minors for too long. Let's get to the next part. I'm going to let you dictate that, whether we want to round off hitters or move to the lock pitchers, because we're cooking with gas. And so is DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, all new customers who bet $5 on anything will get $150 in bonus bets instantly with promo code BAKERS. So whether you're doing same-game parlays, live bets, odd boosts, whatever it is, and if it's not ready in your state yet, you can do the DraftKings daily stuff. We've been doing that every Tuesday. It's a good time. Line up prices on people, budgets, a lot of life lessons. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use promo code BAKERS. Bet just $5 on any wager. Get $100.50 in bonus bets instantly. Promo code BAKERS only at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Bailey, what do you think? Do you want to do the meaty pitchers first, and then we finish with the most fun fringe players, or do you want to do some of these funky fringe hitters and we'll just go hitting and then pitching?
Here's what I want to do. I want to do the next tier of hitters, and then I want to move on to the pitchers.
Sure.
So the next tier of hitters, and we'll try to speed things up a little bit now because we're getting into sort of like the less likely cases. This is what I've called these guys have had inconsistent careers, and though recently they have come into like a pretty high level of play, and they need to keep doing that, basically. Keep doing that for, let's say, 3, 4, 5 more years and see what they're at. Those players are Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, Christian Yelich, and Carlos Correa. Those guys have had their ups and downs. Seager, it's been more so injury. Semien, it's been, being an MVP runner-up and then or not being good and then being an MVP finalist and not good. Yelich, Correa, it's been documented, but those guys, at least within the last calendar year, have played very good baseball. And it's just a question of how long can they keep it up? Because if they can keep it up for 3, 4, 5 years, then, hey, we've got something here. But otherwise, there's too much inconsistency early on in their careers to make it happen.
Who would be your horse if you got $20 to put down on either of those 4?
Seager. I just love Seager. I know this probably of these 4, he's had maybe the worst year, maybe the worst 2024 so far.
Semien.
But that's true. I would go Seager. I just think just something about his approach, man. Like he's special. I would love to see it be him.
Yeah, I mean God, I was gonna say Correa's maybe the safest bet just because with his bounce back
with
and
the
his
age.
This was also a guy that I think real medical doctors advise teams do not give this man money, because I was just gonna play the injury card for Seager, and that was Correa's whole free agency.
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable Correa's having the first half that he's having right now. I mean, it's been so fun to watch. I'm so happy for him. But yeah, I mean, he literally signed 2 contracts and then they backed out because and the quote was worst ankle I've ever seen. I think that's still going to probably follow him around.
A doctor said that. Worst he's ever seen?
Yeah, but also like he has 44 career WAR and this is his age 29 season.
Right.
Like, that's why he's the safest.
Yeah, and that's where, and I love Corey Seager. Whenever the best hitter argument gets brought up, I usually start with Freddie because it just feels so natural, and then someone brings up Seager, and I'm like, he has an interesting argument, but then it's also bizarre because, like, no MVP in the bag, second last year, but I don't know, and I think he's picking up speed right now. That as long as this cat stays on the field, but he's got like a little bit of a real injury history there, so, and that, like, let's say he's good but semi banged up the next couple years, he's to where Correa is right now. So that's one of those, like, I don't know. Corey Seager's awesome in doing stuff at shortstop we've like literally never seen. And like you said, if you don't keep it going in the 30s, it just changes the whole outlook, which is bizarre because I'll tell you what, body changes. Not in a puberty like, whoa, look at this. Body's like, oh, ooh, easy, Corey.
Easy, Jacob.
Who am I even talking to at that point? Let's go. Let's do the big pitchers. Lock. You have a big 4 here. And then I think it'll be fun to bounce around to some more Bailey Jake type categories. But go off, King, on your pitchers.
Yeah, there's 4 active pitchers. I'm going to include Zach Greinke in this because he's not officially retired. Maybe he's still biding his time. Maybe he'll pitch in the big leagues this year. We just don't know. But Justin Verlander, Clayton Kershaw, Max Scherzer, and Zach Greinke are Hall of Famers. They represent sort of the last of a generation of workhorse pitchers that we may never see again. And those are the 100% locks. After that, we have Ohtani, but that's a different case. Right. He's at a 90%, same as before. And then slightly following, that generation of pitchers, the Verlander, Kershaw, Scherzer, Greinke, I have Garrett Cole with an 80% chance. And that's going to be, once those 4 get in, those 4 being Verlander, Kershaw, Scherzer, Greinke, it's going to be like, you just look at the pitchers that are around and it's going to be like, wow, either it's Garrett Cole or just nobody gets in forever, you
Yeah.
know? And I would choose Garrett Cole. I would bet on Garrett Cole in this scenario. Getting that Cy Young last year really helped. I think that's something that people would definitely look at.
The Cy Young's huge. It's still crazy he didn't get the, what was it, 2019 JV sneaks it from him. Yeah, I mean, Garrett, like you're saying, he's on the path, and the whole, like, half the appeal of Garrett Cole is that this should continue. Like, his throwing motion, his body type, like, that's the sell. That's why the Yankees have been obsessed with him, that they gave him that contract. So, yeah, I mean, it's, if he can ever stumble into the second Cy, I mean, he's 33 now, turns 34 this year, but a lot of the big four you just named, I mean, Verlander's still twirling the pill. I think I actually haven't watched Scherzer, but the stat line hasn't been too bad, I don't think. But yeah, that's a historic four. And yeah, it's funny. Garrett acts like he's in that company, and he is, but also he's like right outside the front door.
Yeah, I mean, Garrett had a really good year with the Pirates. It was like 2015, I think. But like, I mean, if you look at where like those four were in 2015, like, yeah, they're not quite of the same generation to me, even though I guess he's probably only like, what, 2 years younger than Kershaw, 1 year younger than Kershaw or something like that.
Oh my God. What's up with that guy? Is he coming back? What's the Kershaw update? Beebs, you're on it.
Looking for it. Heard nothing.
On the beat. Love this, because this has been the one, and hey, maybe we do start judging pitching differently, and I don't know if that helps or hurts this group of guys, but every time I end up on these three guys' baseball reference page, I end up rolling my eyes, and I'm like, they're Hall of Famers. Like, it's over.
Yeah, yeah. Well, who are those again?
Dirty Craig Kimbrell, Kenley
Yep.
Jansen, and Aroldis Chapman.
Because if you just look at the all-time saves leaderboard, like there they are sandwiched among all the other reliever Hall of Famers, right?
It's them. It's them in the Hall of Fame. So unless they drastically decide to devalue relief pitching saves and value starting pitching differently, which feels horribly rude to a generation of relievers.
Right.
But yeah, those guys have to be in, and they're still, I mean, Chappie is obviously, I don't know. He was on the Rangers last year in the biggest innings of the World Series. Like, if he ends up having some weird closer seasons in bizarre places, I could see that happening. Craig Kimbrell is closing for the best team in the American League right now and closing well. And Kenley Jansen is closing very well for the hottest team in the AL.
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable. And what's so funny too is like just think about like the reputation some of the other like Hall of Fame reliever, even the recent inductees we've seen. Rivera obviously is on a tier of his own, but Hoffman or Lee Smith got in right at the bitter end, and Billy Wagner's a guy who just missed last voting cycle, and it's like, yeah, but like people were just so much more scared to watch Kimbrell, Jansen, and Chapman close for the majority of their careers. Like fans of those teams were like biting their nails more in a way that, like, when Trevor Hoffman came in, like it felt like it was over.
What is that, by the way? Is that just like us not having access to enough TV that it was like you see Trevor Hoffman stats and odds are the one time your team plays them and he pitches, he's gonna be good. So we're just like, Trevor, that changeup, or I mean, because his whip can't be in like that much different of an area code than Kimbrell, right?
Well, I would guess his whip is probably higher than all three of those guys. That's going to be my guess right now. But yeah, no, that may be a good point, Jake. That you just check the box score in the newspaper the next day, and he gets the save, and you're like, well, that's the save, right?
That's
but you don't see that he walked the leadoff guy, and then someone got a scrappy infield single, and then he had to work his way out of it.
God, I haven't been on Trevor Hoffman's page a lot. Look at this beauty. Oh, God. Second in the Cy Young in 06. Second in the Cy Young in 98. Bugs Bunny changeup, real strikeouts per inning. Good for you. Where's the whip? Let's see. Career...
He's got Chapman beat on whip. He does not have Kenley beat.
105.
And Yeah, so he's between if ranking those in WHIP. The best is Kenley, then it's Kimbrel, then it's Hoffman, then it's Chapman.
It's funny position, funny going crosshairs. Those guys have to be in. They're historic, and I guess in a way, like they're part of a revolutionized game. I know there were closers, but for these guys to do it for that long, not a lot of guys have done it. That's the whole point of the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and can I point out something too? Like, because I think the way that the closer position has actually been used in like the last 5 or 10 years, where it's like more fluid, and you see guys take on the closer role for a year or two, and then maybe they're a setup man the next year, maybe they're like a multi-inning, high leverage guy. It's going to be really hard for any pitcher, I think, to rack up 400 saves ever again. And you look at some of even the great active relievers right now, it would be very hard for me to project anyone to get to 400 saves.
Yeah. And then after that part of the list, what was that? You have everyone 40% or lower. So maybe let's hop around the pitchers.
Okay.
Because, I think there's a lot of great conversations from top to bottom of this current list, and then we can hop back to some of the silly hitter ones.
Yeah, so the next sort of tier of pitchers I've got is guys where we're probably going to have to reassess the position to some degree, because once it's Verlander, Kershaw, Scherzer, Greinke, and then probably a little afterwards Cole, like assume those guys get in. My light just fell. That freaked me out a little bit. Sorry. Once that gets in, then it's just like a wasteland, because like no one who's going to get to 200 wins, who's going to get to 3,000 strikeouts, those general marks we see, who's going to get to 60 WAR. It's hard to see anyone doing that at the starting pitcher position. There have been a lot of discussions. It seems like the position itself is in crisis, and so the standards will have to change. So deGrom is in that tier, and Chris Sale is in that tier as well. And then I have kind of a fun one to round out that tier, Sandy Alcantara. deGrom is kind of self-explanatory, right? Like here's a guy who's had insane Hall of Fame peak, who probably on like a start for start basis is up there with any pitcher when he's at his best. But how many innings has Jacob deGrom thrown in his major league career? Because he got started late too. Jacob deGrom has thrown 1,300 innings, right? Like he's closer to the relievers we just talked about than the workhorse starting pitcher tier in terms of innings pitched. So I almost think looking at deGrom as a reliever to some degree makes sense, because you might say, hey, this is like Billy Wagner times 1.5 or something like that. So that would be one way to look at it. Sale's a fun one, because I think like if you look at Sale, it's like we just accepted that like Lincecum wasn't a Hall of Famer, and we are like, I think probably somewhat okay with the idea that like Felix Hernandez might not be a Hall of Famer, but like Sale's gonna sandwich in somewhere in that tier, right? Like of just guys who had like Hall of Fame peaks, but maybe didn't have the years surrounding it to make it happen. We'll see what happens with Sale, because he may just have like a lot more in the tank. I mean, he's an all-star this year. He's having a monster bounce back, but I think people would have definitely counted him out even 6 months ago in those discussions. But I think he's got a good chance to get in there, just because the strikeout to walk rate is going to be something that like he's going to be the all-time leader in, basically after a certain innings pitched threshold. A 138 career ERA plus is pretty insane. If he could round it out with a Cy Young this year, I mean, that would be pretty amazing.
Hey.
So he's in that discussion for me. And then Sandy Alcantara, he's the fun one for me, because like let's say a year ago, right? If you'd have asked me, who, if any starting pitcher under the age of like 30, who has at least just a small chance, right? I would say Sandy. And what's funny about Sandy is just right now, like, assume he comes back, assume he's great. He has 41 career wins, because he's pitched for the Marlins his whole career, right? Yeah. So it's like, there's no chance he'll ever get to 200 wins. He'll probably never get to 150 wins. And yet he could still have a really good career. So I'm putting him sort of in that if we reassess the position with regards to some of these traditional counting metrics.
Yeah, and I view numbers through a very basic lens. If Sandy Alcantara doubled his career, that's 82 wins.
Yeah.
And I don't, between pitcher injuries and stuff, I don't know. Chris Sale is the one that really tilted my head. Seeing A, how well he's pitched this year, B, I think it popped up, it's his 8th All-Star game, that the dominance and again, maybe this is where I'm a loser and getting caught up in the condor and just the image of Chris Sale. But if we're tweaking how we look at pitchers from this era, which we have to because the game is played completely differently. Chris Sale is a Hall of Famer, and I think deGrom, it's probably going to be, baseball fodder. But I think because it was so dominant and so crisp, and hey, let's not pretend he's dead. There's a chance it can end quick for some guys, but, DeGrom's arm isn't as impressive anymore, would be him throwing 96, 97, which pundits have been asking for anyway. So, DeGrom could have more coming, although I think we're all skeptical if we said that right now. That I think DeGrom is the perfect baseball sports radio fodder, that it will be enough to get him his first year on the ballot 25%, that all the old heads will go, DeGrom was probably the best I've ever seen. And then it goes from 25 to 33, and then it goes to 33 to 41. And then it's if guys hit it to here, they make the Hall of Fame. And then the DeGrom train's just leaving the station. So, again, not sure what that exercise was, but everyone at home's welcome. Subscribe.
Well, I'm completely following what you're saying because, think about, let's say, 10 years from now, Jacob deGrom is on the ballot. It's his 3rd year on the ballot or something like that. What is the starting pitcher position going to look like then? He's going to look like a workhorse eventually by the time he gets to year 10. They're like, oh, he threw 1,500 innings. Wow. Put him in.
Yeah,
a few 200 inning years in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That whole, that exercise I tried to do about how many active players are playing in the Hall of Fame. I wonder if there'd be a system that would work like that, because where baseball is at, you'll never be able to compare Walter Johnson to any player. And hey, maybe they're right. Maybe we shouldn't be comparing Walter Johnson to any goddamn player nowadays, okay? But you need to look in 20-year windows because none of this is going to make sense.
Yes, absolutely none of this will make sense because we're going to have all these guys retiring with 250, 200 wins and 3,000 strikeouts. And then the next generation of pitchers are going to be guys who pitch 2/3 as much as they did at best.
When you and Jolly adopt a child together, they're going to do a video that's the best pitcher who ever pitched, and it'll be about Zach Greinke, because they'll just be if you line up the eras and how little guys started pitching after that, why didn't we talk about him more? And it'll be wait, they adopted the kid and now he's doing baseball videos? It would be very, I don't know, Netflix?
In ancient Roman times, that's how they would do it. The emperor would adopt his successor, he would become the son, and then that's how they kept it going in a good way. And then usually when they messed up is when they would let the biological son be the emperor instead, and then that's how you get, someone who has no idea what they're doing.
Wow. Little history lesson today, everyone. I guess a lot of history. We were doing mostly baseball.
Mostly past stuff. So.
Yeah. A lot of that.
Starting a rehab assignment shortly.
I love that. Let's go,
Throw a bullpen
Kirsch.
On July 4th.
Imagine if he just dupes us and he goes Jamie Moyer and pitches till he's 48 and just keeps getting outs on 81-mile-per-hour sinkers. He could.
All 1-year deals.
He could do it.
He could.
All 1-year deals, yes. Still with the Dodgers. All 1-year deals with the Dodgers.
Yeah, they just never. They can't commit to each other. I'll read off some of the head turning names on here, and I'll let you cook. And then I am excited because your hitter categories are silly. My elbow hurts. Strider and McClanahan. Let me know. Let's check in 6 years, and we'll say they're either obvious Hall of Famers or they're going to be one of your guys' adopted kids' videos. Yamamoto's funny because, okay, he basically the same category there. And, man, the one that frustrated me, and and then you have a bunch of kids below that, which if you want to talk about, you can. Dude, Yu Darvish, man. I feel like he got a raw deal without getting the Cy Young. That, as far as baseball pitching careers go, I think Yu Darvish has had a Hall of Fame pitching career, but it's one note short, but I think that note would have happened if he didn't spend another career overseas.
Yeah, I mean he has the marks you're looking for. He has 200 wins between NPB and Japan, or no, sorry, not NPB and Japan, NPB and MLB now.
Thank you.
And he has 3,000 strikeouts. So I mean those would be the marks you look for. Like you can it's not as simple as combining the two, but understand that's a high level league, and he has had very much a Hall of Fame baseball career, in that regard.
And something about his feel to me always was, and I mean, again, as we're talking about these potential funny money numbers, I think he's at 2,900 career innings pitched that at a professional level. That if we start looking at accumulators more, the fact he'll have thrown 3,000 pro innings. But no awards.
Still some time on that deal too.
Hey, why not? San Diego was handling Seidler, man. He was dishing and swishing. I guess any other of the pitchers that you think there's a conversation you'd like to have about?
Yeah, I'll just name them off real quick. I had a tier that's just called Roki Sasaki because who knows, right? Maybe he just comes over and does the thing. The next reliever wave is what I refer to as so after the Kimbrel, Jansen, Chapman, then it's just like Edwin Diaz and Josh Hader, and then it's like nobody. So that's what I said with regards to who's getting the 400 saves. Hader's definitely not. He's been used in not traditional closer roles, so that's one of those ways that they might have to reassess relievers as well. If he's almost like a stopper, like an old school stopper. And then I've got some good young guys. Yamamoto's in there, and I was like, Logan Webb and George Kirby, they're off to a decent start, but it's still, it's still so early to say anything. And then we'll stop the pitcher discussion there.
Yeah, I mean, pitchers, just injury conversations that we've had on here and anything. Edwin Diaz, man, that guy's been racking up saves for a long time, huh? 214. He's at age 30. That it feels like he's in line to finish with those other guys. His career has kind of felt equal-ish to those other guys that I would be in on him. And man, we're a little too close to the situation here, but Max Fried is one of those guys. Every time I open up his page, it's like, wait, he's been Hall of Fame level good for a young pitcher.
He doesn't necessarily have the volume, and I guess the whole discussion has been about the volume, right? But purely from an inning by inning, run prevention basis, no one's really been better than him in the 2020s. Straight up, you look at his ERA plus or whatever, it's pretty crazy. Just guy doesn't allow runs,
That's kind of the deal, There's some other fun ones on there. People might be mad if Nola, Wheeler, Burns don't get mentioned. Some percentage points on them. That just kind of becomes that age 30 thing. If you guys keep this up, absolutely. If Father Time wins, you lose.
I do want to shout out, Wheeler, Burns, that's kind of separate. I do want to shout out Nola because he is the guy who has the chance to reach closer to those traditional counting stats, and he is really the only guy after Cole who would have at least a snowball's chance at 3,000 strikeouts or 200 wins, or some of those more typical metrics we see that that was when Sabathia reached a certain threshold, right? That's when people knew. I guess for him it was 250 and 3,000 strikeouts, but even then the times have changed. But that is the guy, Aaron Nola. That is the guy who has a chance to really have that true workhorse career.
Let's jump back over to the hitters, and you've got some low percentage points on here, and I love it. Had something going but lost steam. That's just a sad grouping right now. I'll tell you what I'll do. I think this is really fun, and I have a name to add to your list, Bailey. Because under the category of it would be funny if he hit 500 homers, you have put Kyle Schwarber.
Indeed.
And it would be funny if he hits 500 homers, because that's a convo. And excuse me if I miss this on your list, but I'll put him in the same category. Giancarlo Stanton, who was resurgent this year, is in the fours homer-wise. He's going to have an interesting case because he's got a lot of boxes he can check. He's got the MVP. that if he gets to 500, I think it's going to be tough to keep them out. So I'll put both of those on your tray.
Yeah, no, that's true. I left off Stanton. I didn't intentionally do it, but yeah, I don't know exactly where I would put him on that. But you're right. Like it's foreseeable that he would. I mean, first of all, like Stanton's not even quite doing like a Adam Dunn funny. Like, I mean, Adam Dunn finished I think with 462, but like he's not even quite doing the Adam Dunn where it's like, yeah, this guy has other value. Like he played like decent defense. He won an MVP. So like, yeah, he's at 44 WAR right now, you know, which isn't terrible. Like there are Hall of Famers with 44 WAR. Not particularly good ones, but they're there. And then yeah, he could reach 500 home runs. What's he got left on the contract? Because that's what I want to know. What how many more years does he have?
3.5.
I want to say at least 3 full after this. I'm pulling it up.
Man,
He's got, yep, you're right, 3 full, and then a club option in 2028. Prediction, they're not going to take it. And then he'd be a free agent after that. Yeah, gosh, I mean, I will say, like, I think the steroid era kind of unintentionally shattered the if you get 500 home runs, you're definitely in thing. You know, like yeah, they would have still put like McGuire or Palmeiro or Bonds in if they had no PED connection, but they did have it. But I think unintentionally that sort of devalued the idea of a 500 home run hitter.
It's either that or they'll use it as like a final redemption shot at the, like, you know, at the guys who did cheat. If they're like, hey, this guy hit 500 clean, that means you're in the hall, and that's almost their last wag of the finger at those other guys. But I
actually, that's a great theory.
I don't know. I could see it going either way, but I don't know. My way sounds very baseball writery.
Mm-hmm.
No, but that's exactly what we need in this exercise. We need to, like, you need to get into the mind of the average BBWA member. Like Jake, you must now become 59 years old and a fan of Bruce Springsteen.
I've been beat up a little bit. I've seen too much on the road. I thought Miguel Andujar was a future number retired. I've seen it all, and it hurt me. That's the mindset. I can get in there. And that's where, dude, Kyle Schwarber, 13.7 career WAR. I don't
That's
know.
the Adam Dunn. Yeah.
I don't know. And he's still, I mean, he's 263 career home runs, which is great, but he's 31. I hope he has an Ibanez late 30s run that he makes it a conversation, but that's can't do that. Can't do that. Let's see. Oh, I think this is a great baseball conversation, Bailey, because something that this office gets hot to trot about every, I'd say once a month, is that Jorge Posada should have been considered or at least got some real ballot run at the catcher position. And you have a group of catchers that you listed at 10%, and it's if we reassess the position. So I'll let you tell me about them.
Those catchers are JT Realmuto, who have probably been more on a traditional, like, decent Hall of Fame pace, but he seems to have slowed down just in recent, like, last year and a half. Salvi's a fun one. There are absolutely 5% at least of Hall of Fame voters who will, like, pound their fists on the table. Like, he's gonna make a run on that ballot all 10 years. I have no doubt about that. Salvi's
in
on there.
Like, there's a weird Salvi, like, just borderline 100% because the Royals won one and he's larger than life.
I know analytical baseball people who are like, I throw it all out the door. I want Salvi in as well. You know,
those are my people.
Yes, I know people, and they have Will Smith and William Contreras. They're younger; they've got a ways to go, but they're in a position that Realmuto was at, 5 or 6 years ago, anyways. So why not include them on that as well? But yeah, Salvi is probably the closest. I don't think I could bring myself to do it if I were a baseball writer, just because I care too much about framing. But if you only cared about the catcher arm and you only cared about the counting stats, like, yeah, he's got those for sure.
Yeah, who's like the most recent catcher that's gotten in? Let's see. I mean, Pudge. I guess. I guess borderline.
And Simmons
catcher.
Veterans Committee, but I guess that's not really what you're looking for.
Don't. Was Mauer a discussion?
Oh, yeah, Mauer would be, I guess, yeah.
Was Mauer like? I'm trying to remember. Was Mauer borderline? Or was it like he's going to get in, but he's not a first ballot guy? In my head, that's the conversation.
In my mind, he transformed from a discussion guy to a first ballot guy somewhere in the 5 years where he was retired, but before he hit the ballot,
Everyone talked about how it's going to be an awesome discussion.
Yeah, and then it
wasn't. Just
wasn't.
voted for him.
I thought it was, well, and he's also different from these guys because, like, Mauer only played, like, half his career at catcher, whereas, like, with Salvi, it's going to be, like if Yadi Molina is definitely going to get in, but like, what's the difference between Salvi and Yadi Molina? And I would say about 200 runs of framing. But but otherwise I get it.
200 runs of framing. That's what I thought about Andujar. Yeah, Yadi's in at 42.2 career WAR. Buster Posey's going to be a great thought exercise for the voters in a couple years.
Oh, I don't think so. I think they're just going to put him in.
You think it's just done?
No, I think he's in. Yeah.
Well, I guess it just gets tricky for me because I've got, here comes Yankee Jake again. Thurman Munson, 46.1 WAR.
Right.
Died in a plane accident. I don't know.
Feels like the pace was there.
Well,
he should be in.
I mean, I mentioned Posada. Posada's at 42.7, which is above Yachty. And again, you can go pitch framing on me, but I also saw a switch hitting catcher be like one of the engines to one of the best teams we've ever played. That it becomes more of a Hall of Fame conversation. Like, what are we highlighting? And Yankee fans just, I don't know. If you're a real baseball nerd, you're like, he was only on the ballot 1 year. So I don't know. The catcher position gets interesting because, I mean, right now Sal's WAR is behind Victor Martinez, who's listed as a catcher. Lance Parrish? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Let me ask you this. Just give me the answer right now. You're a Yankees fan. You can put either Munson or Posada in, but you can't put both. Who are you putting in?
Man, my brain jumps to Munson.
I think that's the right answer.
I've only seen a couple highlights, and he was sick.
As an MVP.
Had an MVP. Like I said, Posada was an awesome cog in the engine. I don't know. I get tripped up on him and Bernie, man. Like, Bernie's my favorite player ever, and what I can do with the offensive stats with Bernie and center fielders during his peak, 8 years, not a lot of dudes can match. He gets hurt on defensive WAR, which, my heart can't analyze defensive WAR from past years. I almost just need it on a scale of 1 to 10. And I always thought Bernie was a 6 or a 7. His arm was nothing, but he could run well and get balls that, I don't know, where he's getting hurt in defensive WAR. And I know Gold Gloves used to be just given out by, which players you knew. But I don't know. Obviously struck a chord there, Bailey.
Yeah, I did strike a chord there. Well, Bernie and Posada are basically the same player. They're on the same teams. They're two of the best in terms of the counting stats and the rate stats at their respective positions, and they're seemingly dinged for their defense. I would rather personally put Bernie in of the two, just because I'm with you more. From memories of when they played, Bernie was probably a more competent center field defender than Posada was as a catcher. I mean, for me personally,
okay, my beat writer brain is kicking in again when we're doing this in 25 years. Bernie hit third.
Yeah.
Bernie broke up. And that was back in the day. It was still cleanup hitters, your slugger. Your third hitter's actually your best hitter. The switch hitting center fielder on the dynasty team that won batting titles, racked up offensive numbers between Jeter and whatever left-handed power hitters they had. I don't know. Early Twitter Jake used to get into some deep wormholes on that. Speaking of wormholes, Bailey, why don't hop around on your final hitters list? Because, boy, from young I believe in thems to Austin Riley and Vladdy, you could sell me on those really easily. To, I don't know, is Pete Alonso going to be a dumb 500 homer guy in a couple years? I don't know. So the rest of your list, what do you see?
Yeah, I have a few guys that are just young, but so far so good. Like it was that rookie class we had a couple years ago, like Witt, Henderson,
Yeah.
Julio, Adley. Like it's early, but they're on pace. It's just that a lot of people are on pace at their ages, and it like we said before, it depends. What are they going to do in their 30s? We know they're good in their 20s. What are they going to do in their 30s? McCutchen, I think, is worth having a little bit of a discussion on. You know, he counting stats wise, he hits some of the marks that you'd want to see. I think he's probably a Veterans Committee guy. That's the way I see it. I think he would probably, if he's going to get in, it would probably be via the Veterans Committee, and I wouldn't have a problem with it personally. I think he's had a great career. Yeah. And then we'll move on to like sort of the lower tiers of players. I have a few guys on here. These guys have been on decent pace in their careers, but I'm not so confident it ages well. And that's sort of the Trey Turner, that's Alex Bregman, that's Sander Bogarts. Like those guys, I think if you put up their numbers through age 30, like, yeah, they'll probably match up with some Hall of Famers, some Hall of Fame infielders with regards to some of the numbers they put up. I'm just not sure how well it ages. Turner's been great this year. Bregman and Bogarts maybe a little below their usual career standards, which makes you think maybe they don't have that much more on-field value to offer for the rest of their careers. We'll see. Yeah, people would probably have a discussion there about Turner. It'd be interesting. Like, what if he just keeps stealing bases? Is sort of the thing. Like, if he could just rack up some numbers there, that would be, key if he keeps doing that in his 30s. And then, yeah, I've got the young, but I believe in them tier. And these are the guys. This is Austin Riley, who, to be honest with you, like, has gone tit for tat with Devers, at least over the last like 4 or so seasons. It's just that Devers got a slightly earlier start, and that early start matters a lot in terms of getting to the Hall of Fame. Like if you can get in a season there at like age 20 or age 21, like that makes a big difference. And that's why Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is also in this young, but I believe in them tier. And then we'll round out that tier with Yordan Alvarez because, man, like I just think he's so good. I really do. Like, he has the knees of a 40-year-old, but like he can just hit, and like you can absolutely hit your way into the Hall of Fame, Yordan Alvarez style.
Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has been an interesting one for me lately because with this turned around stretch, his stats for his age, and if you believe there's trajectory on it, like yeah, he'll be there. Similar batters through age 24. Starts with Eddie Murray. Sure. Hall of Famer. Boog Powell, Tony Conigliaro, Freddie Freeman.
Yeah.
Jose Canseco, Justin Upton, Juan Gonzalez, Ruben Sierra, Giancarlo Stanton. So I don't know. It's obviously it's so much about accumulating good years that's what dictates him. And it's just so hilarious that Austin Riley is probably my 1-1 if this was a draft of guys who are a Hall of Famer, but we kind of don't care right now. Like,
that is a great pick. Absolutely. Yeah. Because,
Really
I mean, look at what he's doing.
It's not shots fired. Like, I like Austin Riley. I got to watch some Brave Snakes the other day, and he had that clean pick, and he might have gotten yard in that game. And you're just, every time you look at the stats, it's like, wait, this is a Hall of Famer. And it's, I don't know, you could talk third baseman all day, and it feels like Austin Riley's just an afterthought. Although he was number 1 on our tier list by the end, I believe.
Yeah. You know who I don't have in this tier, but probably should be here is Kyle Tucker.
Yes.
And he's hopefully got a lot to play, but that guy's great too.
Racking up numbers.
Yeah.
Always my favorite game. What contract is he going to get? Because if he hits free agency right, it's over $200 million. It might be over $300 million when it happens. What caught your eye over there, Beebs? I see you lurking.
I mean, different tone than these guys. But have we said the name Jose Altuve yet?
Who?
Oh yeah. Oh, we missed him. For me, he's a Hall of Famer if they retire today.
Yeah, I think
he's either in that Hall of Fame if they retire today, or just putting on the finishing touches tier for me.
Oh God, all the writers going through those allegations again.
Well, but here's the thing though, like they'll sort it out with Beltran, so it won't even matter when Altuve gets there.
That's true.
Will they sort it out with Beltran?
Yeah, they'll let Beltran in eventually. They'll let him suffer, but like he'll get in eventually.
It was a Yes Network exclusive, but There was an inning of baseball where me, Jimmy, and Carlos Beltran sat on a couch together on the Yes app, and people don't talk about that enough.
Yeah,
They know what happened.
did you give him the idea?
There was a lot of moving parts. I get distracted by his mole. It's no offense to Carlos Beltran, but it's a real one. It's like, Austin Powers made a movie scene over it.
Did you get to meet his niece?
I did not. That's that's just our
She
number
wasn't at
one
the
source
office.
at the company. That's the
got
company source.
I got it.
Bailey, I feel half rude because there's so many names that we could talk about that I felt like I was doing a lot of half rushing while trying not to rush. Man, Jordan and Kyle Tucker is some mental work because if you've ever played the Astros over the last 5 years, you're like, whoa, Jordan. And you're like, oh, Kyle he's great, but Jordan.
Right.
And that's just, that's kind of intimidation / World Series game winner. I've decided I'm going to read this sad list real quick. And just a reminder, as we've mentioned, all these guys that had Hall of Fame looks to them, and a lot of them are going to have 30s that the body might give out or whatever happens. Had something going, but lost steam. Anthony Rendon, George Springer, Byron Buxton, Matt Chapman. I'm going to put a little asterisk there because he's turned it around a little bit. Although I guess if you go back to his first 2 years, like those were closer to, like Bobby Witt range, and now we don't think of them as the same class of player.
Yeah, like he was about to have like the career that Arenado's had,
Yeah.
those first like 2.5 years.
Man, Ozzie Albies on this list.
Ounce pound.
Yeah. Bailey, thank you so much. I said it was going to be my last apology. This is a little info to any of the Wake and Jake listeners. If you're a half pathetic person like me, which some of you are, you got to control the stuff you can control. And you got to be punctual. So I'm sorry for being late. I screwed that up. It's funny, Peter Moylan, I think when we first met, like me and Peter Moylan just let it all hang out. And we ended up some dark corners. And he was just like I said something about make sure you're on time. And he gave me like a death look. He's like, I'm a lot of fucking things. But if I tell you I'm going to be there, I'm going to be there. And I was like, whoa, like, are you about to beat me up? And that just shows, if you're silly, if you're whatever you are in life, just show up on time and the rest kind of figures itself out. So, wow.
Easy way to keep people happy with you.
BBD, big on time guy.
Big on time guy.
Big on time guy. Bailey, new video tomorrow?
Ooh, I wish I could say that. At some point this month, there will be a video,
Okay.
and I think we'll all learn something new. That's all I'm gonna say. We'll
Okay.
learn something new. I'm in the process of learning something new while working on this video.
Wow. If it's new to him, it's new to you. Go subscribe, Foolish Baseball, Foolish Bailey, and we'll be catching up with you soon. We want to do some deadline stuff, maybe even a before and an after. And you got a couple other things in the pipeline. So thank you, Bailey.
Wake and Jake is a production of Dan Patrick Productions, John Boy Media, and Workhouse Media.